Hello everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Inside R&D, Outside R&D. Wizards of the Coast have some of the finest game designers in the world all working together to bring you your favourite game. But for Magic 2015, R&D decided to do something really special, something that was truly thinking outside the box.
So before M15 design even began meeting, Aaron approached me and said, "We're thinking about getting some external designers to work on this set, people from outside of the building, people who players have heard of and sort of great minds in gaming. And would you like to liaise with them?" And I thought, yeah, that sounds fantastic. But also intimidating. Not only am I working with my coworkers, we're working with all these people who are just names that you've heard of and whose games I've been playing all my life in some cases. And it was just such an honor and a privilege. Some of these guys knew Magic really, really well, and their designs we could just pluck right out of their initial pitches and put them into the file. Some of them, they didn't know Magic, and that was great because they brought an outsider's perspective, and we got to go back and forth and go some places that Magic just doesn't go normally. So the whole process was really exciting to me. So one of our external designers was George Fan, who made the very popular tower defense game Plants vs. Zombies. And he pitched us 6 cards right off the bat. I would have been happy to put any of them into the file. They were all incredibly clean designs. He knew Magic really, really well. But, you know, we talked about it and we both agreed the coolest of his cards was this one, Genesis Hydra. We love our XGG Hydras, and the idea that this was riffing a little bit off Genesis Wave and you get to dig through your library, it shows up with another permanent, was just a cool design. It's going to play a little bit differently every game, and it's my favorite card in the set. Mike and Jerry, the artist and writer of the comic Penny Arcade, creators of the convention packs, they made this card Avarice Amulet. And it initially began with this idea of, what about a card that dies and then your opponent picks it up, it's kind of betrayed you. I didn't get what their winking reference was at first, but it's this watch that appears in the comic, this Pac-Man watch that the characters fight over, and constantly it's switching hands. And initially we were trying to come at this from a weird angle that was much more of a watch golem, and we were trying to figure out like what happened when it died, and it being a creature was just kind of strange. And then we went back to the original idea, and something that was very close to, well, if I knock down your guy who's carrying this object and pick it up off him, what does that look like on a Magic card? And I think we came to this really quirky design. Love it. Markus Persson, Notch of Minecraft, Minecraft is this great game that's very much like Magic because it's this big open sandbox and you really get to play with the game components themselves and build kind of the thing you want to build in the game, which is exactly like what Magic cards can be. So he came to us with some very kind of combo designs, very Johnny-ish, where you can combine them in different ways. And the one that we ended up with, Aggressive Mining, it's one of those that I'm not quite sure what you want to do with, how you're going to put that into a deck and figure out what exactly to do. But I'm really excited to see where people start building with it. Richard Garriot, Lord British, who created the immense and popular series of the Ultima games, and has been to space, incidentally. He created the card Shield of the Avatar. In the Ultima games, you play the Avatar, and he was going with the idea that it's this object that protects you, but is sort of bolstered by the will of the people, and captured that Ultima flavor really nicely. So David Sirlin is this game designer who really is interested in this idea of Yomi and this mind game of what do you know that I know that you know, and plays and counterplays and counterplays. And so he made this card that eventually became Master of Predicaments. From the idea that you're in the game of Magic, going to play a mind game with your opponent, and you're trying to just stay one step ahead of your opponent the whole time, and it's really fun when you get to just get them because they thought you were going to do something different. Rob Pardo, Chief Creative Officer at Blizzard and one of the lead designers in World of Warcraft, he wanted to make an assassin. And normally Magic assassins, we know kind of what they do. They're royal assassins or something in that vein. But I asked him, what angle do you want to come at this from? And he's like, I want an assassin that hides in the shadows, which is a very World of Warcraft kind of works in a role-playing game, and what does that mean in Magic terms? And so normally we don't let black have hexproof, but it's such a flavorful thing, this idea that the assassin who is just going to hide, and then it's going to spring out at you, and that's when it's vulnerable. It was a really cool design, so we kind of let the flavor drive that. So Isaiah Cartwright, lead designer on the popular MMO Guild Wars 2, created the card that would go on to become Warden of the Beyond. And we let the external designers really play with some space that we haven't really touched much ourselves. And so he made this card that was caring about exiling your opponent's stuff. And that's just not quite something we've played with before. So we went back and forth and really thought, like, if we're going to touch if we're going to care about the exile zone in that way, what do we want to have that look like? And we finally decided, let's make it as simple as possible. Does your opponent have an exiled card? If so, this creature is excited. And it created this really quirky design that's a lot of fun. Justin Gary, founder of Stoneblade Entertainment, designer of Ascension and Soulforge, also might be a name that's more familiar to Magic players because he was a part of the historic team with Yormouth Games. And he created this card, Spirit Bonds. And it's just this great, flavorful design. Your creature shows up, it has this spirit guardian that's watching over it, and it gets to swoop down sometime and save its life. Stone Librande of Riot Games, a designer of Diablo 3 and creative director of SimCity, created this card, Goblin Mine Layer. And it did something really quirky, and it laid these mine tokens, which we barely had any cards that make non-creature tokens in Magic. Eventually became Goblin Kaboomist, and it's in the fine, fine tradition of goblins who are just really bad at doing their jobs. Brian Fargo, founder of In Exile Entertainment, whose resume is just a mile long. He has done so many just classic games, currently working on Wasteland 3, but also created Fallout and, most relevantly, Bard's Tale, popular role-playing game series. He knew he wanted to make a bard, and I was excited by that because bards are something that Magic doesn't have a lot of. We don't have a lot of song as the sort of central driver in our game. And so we went back and forth with some really goofy, fun designs and ended up with this card where the bard just sings and it summons creatures to him, and it's just a great expression of that kind of fantasy trope. Mike Neumann is someone who just kind of does a lot of stuff. He's at Gearbox Studios and particularly has worked on the Borderlands series, but also is a podcaster and does voice acting in the series. He created this card. In playtest, it was dubbed Tentaculon. Eventually would go on to be Chasm Skulker. And he had the image of a creature from Cthulhu's Nightmares, something that was made up of squid. And it's this great card because it comes on the table. It's a blue creature, but it can kind of get in there and deal some damage. And eventually, when your opponent wants to kill it, suddenly you have all these squid to keep attacking them with. James Ernest of Cheap Ass Games and the popular sort of board game Kill Dr. Lucky, he's known for having a sense of humor. And his games are known for having a sense of humor. And he suggested this card, Hot Soup. And I looked at it and I was like, that's really funny. We're never going to print that on a Magic card. That's way outside of what we're willing to do with our IP, what we're willing to do sort of creatively. And I kept showing it to people, and they kept smiling at it. And just like we were willing to sort of stretch ourselves a little bit with some of the design of these cards and go outside of our comfort zone, Creative was willing to give a little bit too and had to figure out how to concept the idea of hot soup in the middle of a battle. Edmund McMillen of Team Meat and the popular indie games Binding of Isaac and Super Meat Boy, he's another one of these guys who really knows Magic really well. And so he wanted to create something that was sort of aggressive, low-cost creature. And we ended up with this really great design for this. It's creepy little girl who's gonna be full of bloodlust and come and get ya. Brad Muir, the smiliest human being alive of the Double Fine Productions, leading the Kickstarter game Massive Chalice, he immediately came at this from wanting to make a commander card and wanting to make a black legend that just made commander players pay attention and do things a little bit differently. And I had to say, well, we can work on this, but we know the story, and the black legend is going to have to be Ob Nixilis, and Ob Nixilis in this new form, he's got his wings back, he's gaining power. And Brad said, okay, let's do it. And we ended up with this great design that's just that, like, cruelty of demons. He's going to punish your opponent for trying to gain knowledge. He's going to grow in power as creatures die. And it just came to this great place that I think is going to be a really fun card, especially for those commander players. So while M15 was in design and development, while we were working with these external designers, we had one more card that was coming to us from outside the building, and that's the You Make the Card. We ran a series of votes and submissions on the website. Ethan Fleischer really led the effort, and we ended up with this card, Waste Not. And I'll be honest, from the final designs, I was not sure that was the most exciting one. And then it ended up in the FFL, and we were playing with it, and someone cast Mind Rot against me while it was on the table. And normally, like, okay, these are the two cards I can't play for a while. And I'm staring at my hand and thinking, oh, if I throw those away, you're going to get mana, you're going to get a zombie. Maybe that's not what I want right now. I'm like, oh, people came up with this really clever design that takes this part of the game that's always happening and just turns it on its ear. And it's just a really fun card, and I'm proud of our community for what they came up with.
We hope you've enjoyed our whistle-stop tour of these talented game designers and their awesome cards for Magic 2015. For Garth Avery, Greg Collins, and all the Inside R&D team, I'm your host Richard Hagan, saying bye.